Hello, everybody. Would you believe that I misplaced my copy of Giordano Bruno's On the Shadows of the Ideas? Well, today we're going to talk about how I found it, and we're going to talk about how all of that relates to remembering your passwords. So if you're joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking, and I will absolutely enjoy sharing with you these strategies. If you're on the replay, hit the thumbs up and say hello in the discussion afterwards. We're going to talk about a one password strategy. We're going to talk about a magnetic image key that has different features. We're going to talk about password managers. And then we're going to talk about the general strategies of finding things when they are missing. So please let me know how you are with passwords, because if you've got things to share, then please do, and go ahead and type in fantasy passwords so we can play with them in the chat and encode them in different ways using different strategies. It's going to be a great session, so excited to have you all here. And one of the things about passwords and losing things is that there's a couple of things. First of all, we have more and more passwords to deal with as time goes on, and for some of us, we have more and more objects to deal with as time goes on. And so our minds have perhaps not a saturation point, but we certainly have competition in our brains for dealing with more and more details. And as we age, of course, more and more things start to, either because we are practicing ourselves, have more robustness and more powerful, positive things happening because we practice, or we start to suffer more and more, which increases our stress, our anxiety, and so forth. And so when I couldn't find this yesterday, I had a strategy, and that falls under the general finding strategies. And as I thought of how I was going to share it with you, I remembered that this is deeply related to passwords. And I was able to find it, and I was able to find it without stress, without strain, but I followed a particular strategy, and I think that that's what helped me find it. And it's related also to memory training and the robustness of relaxation, essentially. So Chrome Woman Walking is in the house. She says she has password burnout, and I'm going to post your contribution here in the chat because it didn't show up on the screen for everybody. But thank you so much for your super chat. I really, really appreciate that very much, as you always do. Make a wonderful contribution, and that's so appreciated. Well, let's work on that, because we can. And again, it's related to finding missing things, and I was able to find this following a particular strategy. So we'll talk about that at the end, exactly what I did to discover exactly where this was. It wasn't really lost, but it was lost in the sands of time in my mind, and just by treating it a particular way, I found it, following a procedure, a step-by-step procedure, and I think you're going to really, really enjoy it. And it's super important because it helps you defeat the evil Dr. Forget, because the evil Dr. Forget actually chases the information you're looking for away. And if you can melt his cold, cold heart, then you can often, not always, but often find your way back to the information that you're looking for. So if you're joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking, how you're feeling, what's new for you. And if you also have password burnout, as Crone Woman Walking has shared, I know I certainly do. And before we get started, I want to let you know we're doing a Relax Your Memory webinar. So if you haven't signed up for that, make sure to go to magneticmarymethod.com/RX and book your spot. We're going to talk about 3 very powerful strategies for relaxing your mind on top of what we're going to talk about today. So it's not repetition, and it's certainly reinforcement, but also new skills that you can just instantly put into action as soon as you know them, to relax your mind and really, really dive in. So that's how I found this, ultimately, was being able to relax my memory comprehensively, holistically, and by having a step-by-step procedure. Same thing with learning anything. When you want to learn and remember quicker, you've got to come at it in a relaxed state. There are some strategies here that I am looking forward to sharing with you on our private classroom session at magneticmarymethod.com/RX. All right, so the history here of remembering passwords is one of the more popular videos on the channel, is 3 ways to remember passwords. And this is something that we're going to extend. We're going to build upon today. We're going to relate it to finding lost objects, and especially lost passwords as well. Because one of the things I've noticed over the years is a lot of people have typed in the chat of this video that they have remembered their passwords after watching it. And so, I've got the link for that in the description below. You may want to follow up with that later. It's also related to a technique that William Gordan and I talk about in The Fist. So if you haven't seen that video, you might want to check it out. Link down in the description, of course. And Brad Zupp is the author of a book called The Hack-Proof Password System. And we had a discussion about the book. It's an excellent book. It's for people who use memory techniques or people who don't and need an introduction to them and memorizing passwords. This is absolute gem out there in the memory training world. So if you haven't read it, please do, and listen to our conversation to supplement your reading, or listen to the conversation to convince you that you want to read it, because Brad is an incredible mnemonist, and he approaches things in a way that everybody can benefit from. I don't care how good you already are, you can still benefit from it, and I don't care how much of a beginner you are, you can benefit from studying Brad, listening to Brad, and so forth. And he's been on the podcast more than once, and I've done a review of some of his other books, so do not miss Brad Zupp for sure. Link in the description for follow-up later. Also, Jonathan Levi and I talked about passwords, and in a way, you might find that what Jonathan and I say on our conversation about crypto and cybersecurity, etc., contradicts what Brad Zupp is saying, but they don't. Excuse me. They technically contradict each other in one way, but not in another. We'll talk more about that today, but I want you to have a library of follow-up resources so that you can really get the big bird's eye view of what this is all about. So one way you might want to think about it is that, and I've always appreciated this about Brad Zupp because he said it on, I believe, what was our first conversation, is he was like, he's coming into a certain age, and so the memory demands change as you grow older, and Jonathan's younger, so we have those kinds of perspectives. Younger individuals who are mnemonists, older individuals who are mnemonists, and then also Brad Zupp and Jonathan are also two different kinds of professionals, and so they have different kinds of things they do professionally, and so the password demands are different. So we're going to talk about this because I'm more in the Jonathan realm, where I probably nearing 100 accounts, if not more than 100 accounts. So we can think about it from that perspective as well. And again, that resource is down for you in the description. So we'll start with the 1 password strategy, and we'll have a great session. And there are more resources for you, and I'll tell you how I found this and how I solved the problem. And it's quite good because it all connects. All right. Also, before we get started as well, it's not prepared yet, but we're going to have a book giveaway, and that is for Ultra Learning by Scott Young. I'm going to throw in, I have very few copies left, throw in a print copy of the first printing of the Memory Connection, and so you'll have an opportunity to win 1 of 2 copies of this and 1 of 2 copies of this from the remaining thing. So stay tuned. Make sure that you're following the plot so that you can have an opportunity to win those copies coming up soon. And let me dive in with the chat here, and then we'll get started. So Chrome Woman Walking says, decades of the internet, I'm finding myself using Google and Facebook to sign in now. I stopped doing it because I don't want Swiss cheese memory. Great. So Swiss cheese memory. What a powerful image there, right? Everybody can just imagine what it's like that their brain is just filled with holes and air is just passing through. Yeah, it's a good brain memory exercise, and that's why I want you to have the best of both worlds, because it's really, really important. And try the different strategies we're going to talk about today. Even if you don't try them, across the board, just give them some thought, play around with them, see how they feel, and go through the exercise of just setting up to do them. It's great brain exercise, and it'll help you avoid that Swiss cheese memory that Crone Woman Walking is referring to. And thank you again for that wonderful super chat. Really appreciate it. All right, James is in the house. Good to see you, James. Says, good evening, Magnetic Family. Anthony, what do you think of using a line of a lyric from a favorite song? Well, that's what we're going to talk about. So great minds think alike. Thanks for being here, James. If you're just joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking, and how you're feeling. Now, it's been suggested many, many times that you can just have one password across the internet. And to make it super complicated, but simple to you, but super complicated to anybody else, think of a lyric from a song that nobody knows that you know, or maybe they do know that you know it, but how are they going to figure out that it's that lyric? And then make that your password for everything, right? Now, we're going to talk about some pros and cons to doing that way, but it is an interesting strategy because let's say, let me dig into some lyrics here. Let's just say it's happy birthday, right? Happy birthday to you. So then you might be thinking, well, what are you going to do if you're required to have numbers and symbols, right? And uppercase and so forth. So you could just make the first letter uppercase or the last letter uppercase, set a rule. And then, in the word you, O could be a 0, right? So now you've got your symbol, or you've got an uppercase and a symbol, and you could just have a hashtag at the end, something like that. That's a simple way of doing that, right? I wouldn't use happy birthday to you, but it's just an example. But you could think of a song. So maybe, I don't do this, but maybe it could be if you know songs in other languages, for example. So, Ich werde in die Tannen gehen. And then that's a Rammstein song called Ohne Dich. So, or, you could even use the title. So just Ohne Dich, and then that O, instead of O, it could be a 0, for example. And instead of the C, you could have a parentheses so that you get the symbol in there. So there's lots and lots of ways of doing that. It's kind of cool to think about. And then, if you have every password that way, I don't know if that's a great strategy, but you could do it. But it's just a way of generating passwords and using song lyrics. You can also use scripture, right? So whatever scripture you might be into, woe to you, O earth and sea, for the devil sends the beast with wrath. I mean, it's long, but just even part of it could be there. So you could think about that. Same principle. You need a number in there. Well, woe to you has an O, so that could be a 0. E's can be 3s, etc. Now, in terms of other options, you could have a quote, or you could just have a random word series, right? So that's an option for you to be able to have this working. So I hope that answers your question. What do I think about it? I think it could work really, really well. And then the question is, if you're going to have it as a global password strategy, that's what all your passwords are, well then, it's easy to remember once that you've memorized that one thing because you already know it, right? You're choosing a lyric you already know, or a scripture you already know, or a quote you already know, or a random series of words that you already know, like it might be your wallet or something, key for crypto. It's just easy to remember because ideally you already remember it and nobody really knows that you know that song. Like, now you know that I know and can sing Ohne Dich by Rammstein, but I don't have it for any of my passwords. But nonetheless, that sort of thing is, you're just hitting the ground running because you already know it, right? So that's kind of cool. But the downside is that if one person knows that that's your one password, then they know all your passwords, which is not good, right? So you got to take care of that. So if you're just joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking, how you're feeling, what's new and exciting to you. And we will carry on with the idea of having a magnetic image key with features. If you have any questions, pop them in the chat. That's what we're here for. This is the opportunity to interact live. Anything you want to say, then let's make that rock and roll. Remember that now is the time to be alive. Mr. Death is always around the corner saying, catch you later. Catch you later. That's what he says there. Catch you later. So let's make this fun and have a good time together today. And I always like to show this now too that I've got it, the Amor Fati coin. Love your fate. as they say. All right. So in terms of the magnetic image key with features, here's another strategy for you. If you wanted to have the ability to just have a key image that is changeable as you go across the internet, you could just pick something and then add features to it as you go along. So imagine for your Apple account, if you are an Apple user, that you have apples involved in your password there. And so Abraham Lincoln is your key. So for all your passwords, you have Abraham Lincoln, but your Apple password has apples in it somehow. And of course, it doesn't have to be directly Apple, right? Because, a lot of people would say, oh, I'm going to get into your Apple account, so I'm going to put the word Apple in there. But it could be something related to it. So it'd be like Abraham peels, for example. And you know that Abraham is peeling an apple, right? So you start with your key, and then you add a feature. And that feature can be indirect, but it is in your mind the trigger that reminds you that apple is apple, right? But you go from peel to apple, and you have Abraham there. Now, let's say you've got a Barnes & Noble account. So now you've got Abraham, and you don't have to put the word B in there, although in this case, if you just put Abraham B, then that to you triggers Barnes & Noble, because B and B, right? But you could also just say Abraham gathers honey, or something like that as the password. And you in your mind know that honey is connected to B, so you then have the bee putting honey all over Abraham Lincoln's books, which reminds you of Barnes & Noble, right? So give that a try. Even if you just do this as an exercise, you will have a lot of fun and a lot of benefit from brain exercise and avoid that password burnout that Crone Woman Walking mentioned, which is really essential to avoid that burnout and be able to grow over time. Put in the brain exercise, put in the memory exercise so that you develop what's called memory reserve in the science. And as far as I understand it, it's really strengthening the neuronal connections so that your brain is firmer, it's more fit, right? So even if you aren't going to use these strategies, go through the motions of setting yourself up as if you were going to use them to get the brain and memory benefits out of it so that you develop that memory reserve and you have better brain and memory health throughout the rest of your life. Isn't that awesome? I think that's awesome. Hit the thumbs up for that if you haven't already, because that's a pretty good strategy, I would think. Now, one more example here so that we can really, really make sure that we fend off the evil Dr. Forget. Let's say that you have trouble with your password for your own computer, right? So now you could have Abraham, and this is a carp fish. I hope it's a carp. Anyway, that's what I typed in, and that's the picture I got. And it looks like a carp. So we can have Abraham now with carp. And the carp can be, licking your computer or whatever it is. So you think, what is it with my computer here? Well, my key image is Abraham, and this is computer, so the letter C, carp, and you just work with it. And you bind them together. You weave them together in space. And of course, you can use the memory palace technique, because a lot of people, they often ask and they say, won't your mind get confused by putting all of this stuff together and so forth? And the answer is maybe it might, unless you're practicing these techniques, and using a memory palace is a great way to do it. And it can just be a very simple memory palace, because where is your computer? Usually, right? So there's a particular place where my computer is. Oh, right here. You can't see it from the back end, but this is the computer. And so Abraham Lincoln can be right here, and he can be fishing for carp, and the carp is licking the computer. And then we know that the password must be Abraham, because he's the key magnetic image. And then carp, instead of the word computer, carp, right? And then so Abraham carp can be that. And again, if you need numbers, if you need symbols, the A could be 1 because it's the first letter of the alphabet, and the R could be whatever sort of symbol. It could be an ampersand or something. If you set the rule so that you know, and then if you really need it, you could have a keyword written down somewhere that lets you look back if you ever lost it. So you don't want to get too fancy in the beginning, but see how this helps train you in the role of association and being able to associate and practice association and practice before you implement, and just understand that you don't necessarily have to implement here. You can also just have the benefit of the brain exercise practice. But really, to drill down into the steps to avoid that you're not getting confused, you want to take this one sip at a time. Study these techniques, implement the techniques, and then practice them with information that improves your life. Will memorizing passwords improve your life? That's a question you got to answer. But generally, just putting in the practice with them will improve your life. And of course, it can reduce stress over time because you have greater security. And then you, more and more over time, have less, oh, I lost my password. And then you got to go through all these steps. You'll just have it in your mind, right? So that can be a great, great, great benefit. And then practice with memory palaces and use this as an exercise with memory palaces. Ali G is in the house. Guten Abend. Wunderschön. Dass du hier bist. Also. Always good to have someone here from Germany. Good to see you here. If you're joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking. And that'd be amazing if this was the real Ali G. Insofar as there is a real Ali G. But if that's you, Sasha Baron Cohen, that will be great. I would love that. How is your memory? Actors and comedians and people always are so interesting because they are memory artists in every possible way. But yeah, I would love to help train the memory of Ali G if he needed it. What a great character! What a memorable character! All of Cohen's characters are really super good. All right, Chrome Woman Walking says, I have a good one for my student loans, and it doesn't even involve hatred anymore. Well, that's good. Yeah, I think Gilles Deleuze said, the only thing worthy of hatred is stupidity. So good if we can get rid of that, because there's sort of a tautology there, right? In the way that he says that, because he was a clever guy. Anyway, what we need to do is we need to study these techniques. We need to implement them. We need to practice them, ideally with memory palaces. And then we all do this for the DOC, right? Which is basically being able to have this discipline being the origin of confidence. It's the origin of the creativity that we need, noting that creativity is being what is not being creative, not always building things from scratch, but identifying what already exists and then recombining it. That's what creativity always was. Right? You don't have to be original. A lot of people think when they get into memory techniques, oh, but I'm not creative. I don't have all this imagination to come up with wild things. Well, you don't have to. And no truly creative person ever does that, right? The history of art is a history of reference. It's a history of illusion. It's a history of recreation. The word original means of origin, right? And so you look at Da Vinci, you look at Raphael, you look at Michelangelo, you look at all of that stuff. You look at the great poets, Ezra Pound, T.S. Eliot, etc. Whoever it is, there's just no. H.D. was great, also Hilda Doolittle. You think of those great people. This is an endless history of references. They're original, to be sure, because they're of origin, and they make more faster. Likewise in memory training. You just use the tools. You make your lists. And I see an A, Abraham Lincoln, Al Pacino, etc. I'm not being creative in the sense of making anything new. I'm just referring to what is already there, digging around in the mental Lego so that you don't have to spend energy, so that you don't have to chew up all kinds of time and struggle. This is never about struggle. This is about the speed of implementation based on your existing competence. So we do, which is the D of DOC, we do in order to create competence, in order to create confidence, in order to create consistency, in order to have that creativity consistent, right? So that we can do EEC, which is the expanding of existing competence. So wherever you are, you have enough competence to look at the letter A and think of, what are all the things that come to mind when I think of the letter A? If you're rusty, if things are slow, well, then just start where you're at and let yourself push through the rust, because you have the existing competence to draw a letter A on a piece of paper. Or if you don't have the use of your hands, you have the existing competence to get up some sort of speech recognition software and say, computer, type A on the screen, and then Al Pacino, Abraham Lincoln, whatever comes to mind. And then you go to B. If you only get one or two, that's fine. Start to build these tools and expand your existing competence, EEC, because the next thing you know, you'll have more A's than you know how to deal with, right? Very, very, very powerful and effective. But you got to understand these tools. They're like strategies with a mindset component, and then you'll never, ever, ever be out of associations. Never. All right. Month says, Anthony, I have a testimonial. How can I memorize my notes in large quantities? And I have less time. Great question. And basically, if you have to memorize lots of notes in large quantities in a limited set of time, what you want to do is make sure, first of all, that this never happens, that you need to ask this question before an exam in the future, and use this as an opportunity to think about that next time. Then what you want to do is you have all those notes. You want to assess those notes and think, is this the right way to be taking notes? You can go and visit the note-taking strategy page on magneticmarymethod.com, which is magneticmarymethod.com/note-taking, and check that out. And then more immediately, you can apply an 80-20 rule to things and just say, so this is a large quantity of notes, but what's the 20% that's really going to get the biggest bang for my buck? And make a prediction, call them out, memorize those, and when you have more time, add another 20% from the remaining amount and work from there. Also, there are many strategies to dive into calls with people, get previous exams to give you a sense of what that 20% might be, and go from there. But always, always, always make sure you have the proper training for the next time. We go through all of this in the Magnetic Memory Method Masterclass in the course called the Master Plan, and it gives you, in addition to that free training on note-taking, it gives you a very, very detailed and dedicated strategy. So I hope that you will avail yourself of those materials so that you don't get caught like this anymore, ever again. So thank you for that question, and I hope to see you on that page that I mentioned and in the masterclass. Kyle is in the house. Good to see you, Kyle. Thanks for being here. You say, what are your favorite books for non-competitive memory training? Aside from the Magnetic Memory Method Masterclass, I started reading some stuff from Harry Lorraine and Dominic O'Brien. Excellent, excellent. So great. I think that you asked the question in the best possible way. So let me compliment you for that. Because one of the issues that we have is that so many of those books are written by competitors, and they extend it to general learning, but they often don't do that much general learning, at least not that we see or know, and they don't seem to live in those ways. And that doesn't mean that there's a lack of value. It's just that you have to put more pieces together in your head than if you have people who do long-term extended learning strategies and projects and so forth. So again, this is an opportunity to remind you that we're having a contest or a book giveaway on Ultra Learning. There's a little bit of a contest element, but we're going to have an Ultra Learning giveaway. I'm going to give away one of the very few remaining. I think I have 10 left. I'm just going to give away 2 of the memory connection along with this. And I would recommend Ultra Learning, for example. I would recommend, let me think here. I would recommend Mark Shannon's book. It's called The Memory Workbook, I think. Yeah, that should be what it's called. I don't know if it went into 2nd edition, but if memory serves, it was put out by Teach Yourself. So the Memory Workbook is good. And, Shannon is a competitor, but I think that that's very good. Also, we have a recording with Mark Shannon in the Magnetic Memory Live, and it is really so valuable. I should probably crank up the price on that, because his contribution alone is just worth at least like $500 because of what he says there in terms of the habits that one would need. So if you have access to that, make sure that you go through that. So even though he's a competitor, he's also a very productive guy and has done some impressive things, including like work with TV and so forth, that just astonishes me, his accomplishments. So there's that. Also, Kyle, if you haven't yet, you need to be reading Bruno. So this is on the shadows of the ideas. If you can get hold of this, then that would be good. Also, read 30 Seals. Scott Gosnell's translation is really good of Bruno's 30 Seals. To give you more clues, because I know you're advanced, you're looking for more. Bruno was before the competitions, so make sure you're reading that. And Bruno, he plays it straight. He's the real deal. And he can be a little bit frustrating, though. But this is good because you dig deeper. You pay more attention to his secrets and you map them onto your own experience. And that helps you with I can't get my finger over there, the EEC, right? Which is the expanding your existing competence. So if you want to expand your existing competence, what you do is you continue to read and you continue to read non-competitive stuff. Now, also, you can read Plato on memory. Now, that's general, right? And you're going to have to fish because there's a lot of Plato, right? But if you can find, some Plato on memory, that'll be very interesting. And Aristotle on memory, really, really important. Now, if you're in the mastermind, there is a course, Aristotle on memory, and in it, I unpack Plato and how Plato influenced Aristotle. This is super specific stuff. And if you already have a certain level of existing competence, you will be able to expand it tremendously because your eyes will be ready to see and your ears will be ready to hear the extraordinary value, right? And there's no right path. There's no perfect syllabus here. Start here. But there is a perfect just get started. So pick something. Pick Bruno, pick Aristotle, pick some Plato, probably Plato after Aristotle, so you're able to perceive it, right? And then go from there. Because you can also read Thomas Aquinas on memory in the Summa Theologica. You can read about Matteo Ricci, for example. And one of these days I'll finish my translation of the Shigua Jifa, which essentially translates as Western memory technique, which is Matteo Ricci's book about how it's the techniques he used to learn Chinese to the point where he could write in Chinese in a very short period of time. Some people will hear that and they'll go, that's not a short period of time. It was like 12 years. But it's still a pretty short period of time, especially when we're thinking about classical Chinese. And he's teaching people, how to memorize books forwards and backwards. And the reason why I haven't finished it yet is because I want to do it right. But I've finished translating the core of it. And then there's a part where I'm not sure how to translate it because he gives his mnemonic examples for Chinese readers, and it's not so clear. But I'm taking this as an inspiration because I would like it to be as beautiful as this. Because there's an opportunity to do something like this for the translation of the Shigua Jifa. Okay? And we'll get there. But it just needs that TLC, tender loving care, and it takes time to do advanced books, especially when there's translation involved and so on. So I hope that helps answer your question, Kyle. And I may drop dead before it gets done, but at least the biggest part is done in terms of the straightforward, sensible stuff. Now the heavy lifting of figuring out how to make his examples for Chinese to a Chinese-speaking audience make sense. We'll get there, or we won't. But we'll have a lot of fun one way or the other, right? And it's all about expanding existing competence. So part of the reason why that it's stalled is because I just don't have the competence yet to manage such a big project. And so I just need to expand it, which all things are going well because my next book, I have a number of meetings. I've had a number last week and a number coming up this week to figure out how we can do something that looks at least as close as we can get as good to this. In fact, I've had some correspondence with the person who produced this, but we're also going to try our best to get it in bookstores all over the world as an independent so that we don't have to dumb it down, because I'm pretty sure that a traditional publisher will say, oh, no, no one will, no one would, no, too complicated. And we don't want to take away the robust nature of these techniques as I teach them just because some corporate Yahoo is just like, oh, no, No. But we want to sort of emulate that world anyway, so we can hit the ground running and learn how it works and so forth. And so I've been having lots of chats, etc., etc. And by the way, I'm not bitter or anything like that about the corporate world. I interned for Bloomsbury when I lived in New York, and I am a great admirer of how books like this get done, even if I think that I honor the audience a little bit more than I think some of the pressures of the book industry do, because they have an unusual way of helping people confuse activity with accomplishment. And they just sort of, well, whatever. We could talk about that a different day. We're here to talk about passwords and how we get there. So Abraham Lincoln with CARP. Maybe you use COI instead of CARP, whatever. The idea is that you can link the magnetic key image with an image that helps you remember what it's for. In this example, we were talking about your computer. We don't necessarily want to use the word computer, but we want to have something that is sonically or echoically or phonically connected that triggers what that word is. So when you sit at your computer and you go, oh, what was my computer password? Well, my magnetic key image is Abraham Lincoln, and this is my computer, so the computer starts with the letter C. Ah, he was fishing for carp. And then you know what it is, right? And your mind won't get confused if you have a good memory palace strategy and you just take these techniques one sip at a time. Study them, implement them, practice them with information that improves your life. Do, because doing, DOC, is the origin of competence with these skills. It's also the origin of the courage that people need in order to keep going, and so on. And just look reality in the face, understand where you are right now, and EEC, expand your existing competence. That's what we all need to do. That's the message today relative to this. And I got to say hello to David in Tennessee. Thanks for being here, David. Thanks for saying hello. If you're joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking, how you're feeling. And I really need to let you all know that if you're not signed up, make sure you meet us for our webinar on relaxing your memory so you can expand existing competence, so you can follow the DOC and SIP. Because a lot of people aren't getting there. They're not able to do it because they just they're not relaxed. They can't relax their minds enough to actually implement consistently. So we're going to talk about that and give you a number of strategies. All right. So let's carry on and talk about password managers. So at the beginning of today's presentation, I mentioned that, Brad Zupp is great for helping you get more of the mnemonic strategies, and really, really more than the strategies we've talked about today, enable you to have multiple sorts of options for how you can memorize passwords and not need to store them in a password manager, which has security risks. But as Jonathan Levy and I talked about, if you're in business, for example, if you are a person like ourselves and you have, what are you going to do if you have hundreds of accounts? Does it really make practical sense to have a memory palace with or a memory palace network just for passwords when you need to share those accounts as an entrepreneur with multiple team members? Quite frankly, it doesn't. And you want to have on your team people who are specialists in whatever they specialize in, remove as much friction as possible. Great if they want to become mnemonists, and I totally support anybody who works on my team to pick up those skills and do it. But, we really want them to do their job well, and we have to manage all kinds of people in and out of our accounts, etc., etc. So a password manager is really, really important. I won't mention the one that I use, but there's a lot of ones that you can find. Just type in password manager into Google, and if you want to hear my discussion with Brad Zupp, search that Brad Zupp password managers, and you can hear our discussion, or just follow the link below so that you can get that material and listen to what Jonathan and I have to say. That's really the rationale for having a machine memorize your passwords, is if you're an individual who runs an organization and you've got dozens, potentially hundreds of accounts that multiple people need access to, then do that. And even if you don't want to do this and you want to focus your memory techniques on language learning, you want to focus on memorizing the names of people in your company, if you want to do whatever it is you want to do, then, I always recommend that you memorize the information that improves your life. That's the P in the SIP principle. practice with the information that improves your life. So you might be thinking, well, language, focusing on memorizing a language, that improves my life a heck of a lot more directly and in a more focused way than doing it with passwords. So then do that. Come back to passwords later. But as I said earlier, with the strategies that we went through, we're going to get a great benefit just by going through the steps, the exercises, to get ourselves there. So if you missed the beginning of the replay, or you missed the beginning of today's live, go through the replay, and you'll get great benefit out of just turning what we talked about into brain exercises. Spend a little bit of time with it, and I'm confident that you will enjoy. Now, we're still going to talk about how it was that I lost this sucker and how I found it, and the steps that I went through, because there's a relationship here between how you can get back lost passwords and then lost objects. There's sort of a relationship between the two. But I want to remind you all of making sure that you register for our webinar if you missed it, because we're going to go through 3 more powerful strategies to relax your memory after we get through what we're talking about today at magneticmemorymethod.com/RX. All right. So all of these resources are really important, and we're going to talk about some general finding strategies. So everybody's really quiet today. Let's check in with you all. Do you want to talk about general finding strategies on the live stream today, or should we call it a day? Let me know in the chat if you're alive and kicking, if you have any interest in this, or should we save it for another time when things are a bit more active. I'll be very, very interested in saving the energy if no one's interested. But let's see if we can get at least the 80-20 rule in effect here with people. I'll remind you again that pretty soon we're going to do the giveaway of Ultra Learning with one of the last copies, saved a couple for an occasion like this, of the Memory Connection. So that's going to be coming soon. You'll be notified, especially first, if you're on the email list, and we will mention it here. And there'll be a small little task to complete in order to verify that you indeed would like to be considered a winner for the copies of these books. And if not, no problem. But if you're joining us, hit that thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking. And this was a crazy situation. So I needed this for a meeting, and I couldn't find it for some reason. And it's not just that it's such a beautiful book, right? But it's also something that I read and reread and go into deeper for inspiration and guidance and so forth. And as a reference to for one of the things I want to do with my new books. And I had a meeting, and for some reason I couldn't find it. And I had to remember a strategy that I knew before about how to find lost objects. And so I want to talk about that and share that with you, because I think it'll help you reduce a lot of stress in your life. And Chrome Walking says, I still can't find my pocket planner. That thing is gone, LOL. So let me talk about that. Maybe we can help you find your pocket planner. Maybe not. I don't know. But it depends how far back in the sands of time it is. It depends on whether it's lost or not. It may have been stolen. There's a lot of innuendos here. So I'm not offering a magic bullet. It's not going to work all the time. But I find it very, very useful when I've misplaced something or I can't find something. And it applies to missing passwords as well, or lost passwords. And it's at least worth a try. And that video that I shared with you at the beginning, if you go and look in the discussion, quite a few people have said that they found their password after watching that video. And so it can work. It can work. It's worth going through it and having it as a step-by-step strategy. So I don't know that it'll help you find your pocket planner, because I don't know the full story there. But try this with it anyway. See what comes up as an exercise. And it certainly helped me find Bruno, because I was calm, and for the reasons that we will discuss, and anybody can be, and that calmness is part of how I tracked my way back to it. All right, so Martin is here. Good to hear from you, Martin. Says a general strategy survey could be a good intro. Great. So thank you for mentioning that, Martin. Please say more about what you mean by a general strategy survey as a good intro. Love to hear what you're thinking. John is in the house. Good to see you, John. Wow, great to have you on a live stream in Northeast Ohio. Wonderful, wonderful. So Northeast Ohio, let me think in my mind here. I've been to Geneva, Ohio. Is that right? Is there a Geneva in Ohio? I think so. I'm pretty sure that's where I was. And that was a nice visit. Oh, no. Ohio. Yeah, I think that was Ohio. Got a fact check here. Maybe my memory is off. USA. Yeah, it must have been Geneva, Ohio. In any case, I really like to think through American geography. Some people think that I'm American, but I'm actually Canadian, and I haven't spent nearly enough time through the United States. But I have spent a fair amount of time there. And if memory serves, Ohio is where I think I remember it being. Got to think about that. Anyway, you're saying, doing well. My father and I have been working on the outside of our houses this week. Hope you're well. You look well rested. Well, thank you. I actually am well rested. We had a wonderful bike adventure on Saturday, which was started early in the morning. Went and gathered a bunch of memory palaces and had a lot of fun doing that. You know, I want to pick up on this because I've been thinking recently that there's some warning signs in my memory. And it's kind of concerning. I might go see the doctor about it because I'm thinking here and I'm just like, where is Ohio? And I'm just drawing some sort of blank of exactly how the United States works that I should know. And this has been happening more and more and more. So I'm getting to that age. And as I mentioned earlier, one of the things about Brad Zupp that's so interesting to follow that he mentioned I believe it was the first time that I interviewed him, was about how he's entering a certain age. And he's doing this memory training to help improve his memory. And I've been noting, since I turned 40, I've been noticing this change. And I remembered that he mentioned that change in entering his 40s. And so I think it's an interesting adventure. We in our community have an interesting opportunity to sort of pause on these things. Is it an ugly sister effect right now where I'm thinking of Ohio when actually I need to be thinking of a different place? And I'm thinking, was it Geneva or something else? Because that just doesn't sound quite right. And there's words for this, that feeling of that doesn't sound quite right. I think it's called jamais vu. So jamais vu, if memory serves, is when it's not déjà vu, but jamais vu is, if memory serves, it's when something that should be really, really familiar to you suddenly feels very foreign. So this feels like it's familiar and foreign to me at the same time, but I might just be mistaking where it was. This was back deep in the sands of time. Actually, if you give me a second, I can check this, I think. Did I put it away back on my shelf? Oh, no, there it is. Okay, sorry. We're ruining our live stream flow here, but I think this will be worth it. Oh, okay. Almost broke down the house here. So the reason why I even know this place has to do with this book I wrote back in the day. And it should have the publication location. Well, there you go. I was getting stressed over nothing. So it says somewhere here, Geneva, Ohio. So this weird feeling has been coming up more and more where I'm pretty sure it was Geneva, Ohio, but then I have this weird feeling, well, no, that doesn't sound right. And then I'm thinking, Ohio, where is that? And then I'm thinking, Idaho. I'm pretty sure I've been to Idaho, but Idaho is more to the west, isn't it? And I have this more and more, and it seems to be happening more and more as I age. And so the strategy that we're going to talk about here is related to this. You have to relax yourself. You have to calm down. Like, is it really a big deal if it wasn't Geneva, Ohio, right? No. And I don't think that would be called Northeast Ohio. It's more to the west, I think, but it's still in the north, if memory serves. But it's been a long time. I mean, what's the publication date on this book? Must be, let me see if I can guess. It's got to be 2000 or 2001 or something. 2002. Okay, so not bad. But it would have been 2000, 2001 because it took a long time to publish, to get it to the point of being a book. But in any case, I went down there after they published it to do a reading, and really nice press at the time, and I don't know if they're still kicking, but really good. Anyway, this jamais vu, if that's the correct term here, has been happening more and more, along with other things like tip of the tongue and so forth as I age. And so these general finding strategies are very good for that as well. So we get more going on here as we go through, so we can help ourselves find back potentially lost objects, help ourselves find potentially lost passwords, and then help ourselves deal with these issues like ugly sister effect and jamais vu. There's another one. I think that tip of the tongue is called presque vu, if memory serves. Anyway, these sorts of issues we can help ourselves with. They can also help with parapraxis, right? So parapraxis is also known as the Freudian slip. And we tend to get embarrassed, we tend to get anxious when we make these slips, when actually there are strategies to just be calm, cool, collected, gathered, etc. And then, let's just say that I opened this up and it wasn't Geneva, Ohio. It was something like Galveston, or I don't know, whatever, some other name. Well, then we can think of a strategy of how we're going to correct that so we do remember it the next time. So it may be a multiple number of things here, because also as I was thinking here, Geneva, well, I've been to Geneva in Switzerland, and then it's like, whoa, this is Geneva in Switzerland? And it's just like your mind can start to go and tumble all over the place. And we need to start having more discussions about that, especially with the older generation. But because of digital amnesia and digital dementia, we know that this is happening more and more to young people as well, which is unfortunate. Anyway, thank you for being here, John. Thanks for saying hello. I hope everything's okay in Northeast Ohio. And I really appreciate that it led to me having in a live stream this effect. And then essentially practicing the strategy that we're going to talk about right now, which is really, really important when you are trying to find missing objects, even if it's the state of Ohio. Which I think is not missing at all. But the absolute sinister nature of the evil Dr. Forget. If you let him, he will get hold of your soul, and you don't have to. So, whew, we got that one back. Geneva, Ohio is at least on the pages of this book. And I think I was there once upon a time. Kyle says, that sounds fun. How do we produce in the ultra, or how do we participate in the ultra learning giveaway? We're going to talk about that next week. So I just want everybody to make sure you're paying attention so that you can have an opportunity to win one of two bundles of these two things. And you know what? We might throw in something else to sweeten the deal. So make sure that you're there, or as the cool cats like to say, amor fati. Love your fate for missing out if you do. But don't get FOMO, fear of missing out. I'm sure we'll have more giveaways in the future if we are so blessed to do so. And of course, I thank you all for your interest and support. So if you're just joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking, and let's dive into this situation here. So I couldn't find this. What did I do? What did I do to find it? So the first thing that I had to do was, and this can be challenging to do, right? Because I don't care how much meditation you do, how much you scrub out your ego, etc., etc. When you lose something that you need in half an hour because you got a meeting, you're going to have a reaction, right? And ego is the enemy. Bruce Lee, right? No ego, no enemy. But in these moments, things come up because you need something, right? And when you're in a situation of need, you get into a state of scarcity, and then you scramble a little bit. And I maybe there's a way to get out of that, but as long as you're human, as long as you got a brain, you're probably going to have situations like that in your life. So you need a strategy. Strategy number 1, relax, right? And as I observed myself yesterday, I was able to do that, and it can just be as simple as, and just let it go. Like, what's the worst that's going to happen? I can just say, look, for whatever reason, I can't find this, and we'll catch up with it later. I'll send you a video after, etc., etc., etc. But needing some elaborate sort of excuse or telling some alternative, fantasy reality, or heaven forbid, being dishonest about it is not a strategy, right? But when a person is unrelaxed, that's something that they do. And their mind fills up with all kinds of, possible stories that they could tell or whatever, when the truth is just the best possible strategy, right? And, the person isn't really going to care as long as you can make up for it. So the evil Dr. Forget will try to get you. And it's just not necessary. So relax. And some of the ways that you can breathe in addition to this is like literally relaxing your mouth. So much of our tension is locked up in our mouths, right? And literally just doing things like and like that. Oh yeah, I just cracked my jaw. Can do so much to helping you relax, because a lot of our tension is in the mouth, right? So give that a try. And just relax. Get it out of your head. You can do some alternate nostril breathing. So literally in reverse. Oh, that feels good even though I'm not stressed out. Relax. And then when you're ready, look once in an area and look thoroughly so that you can rule it out and you don't have to go back. Everybody knows this, right? You look for something and then you don't find it there. So then you go back and look again. And then you go back and look again. And then you go back and look again. This is not a good strategy. Actually, we had this last week also. My wife lost something, or we couldn't find something that she needed. And because it had a lot of personal information, so personal I won't even say what it is, we were sitting and she was absorbed with this. We were at our favorite cafe, and I said, look, let's abandon course what we were going to do, and let's go back. And I told her, relax, and then let's find it. And it's got to be in that bookshelf, so we will go through it thoroughly. We will take everything off. We didn't have to take everything off because we just took off this one little section, and lo and behold, there it was, out of sight. But if we hadn't, we would go through everything thoroughly once and do it the right way so that without a doubt, it cannot be there. This is a good strategy because then you can write it off and it's off your mind. It can't be there. You can even, if you want, take video footage, right? Just to, not to look at the video footage again, but just to ascertain and give yourself mental clarity that it's not there anymore, that it's gone, right? Or it is gone, but it's not there. So I don't know if Cronin Walking is still with us, but if you didn't do that before, relax and see if you can follow that approach. And who knows what else you might find. I mean, found all kinds of amazing things. And do that. And continue to relax yourself. Relax and then relax yourself some more. So this is how I approached this. Now the problem was I still didn't find it, right? All the places that it could be, I did it thoroughly once. So then the next thing I had to do was mentally retrace my steps. Okay? And so then I thought, well, William, who I made the video with, he was the last person that I remember having it in my hands. And I had lent him a book, or I just gave him a book. I said, it doesn't matter if it comes back to me or not. And that was Stephen King's The Institute. And so I just thought, oh, maybe also, because we were talking about this and using it as a reference for my next book, because William's done the photography for my next book, and he's doing some great diagrams of the memory palace. I can't wait to show them to you because they're really amazing what he's come up with. So that I believe it's going to be completely new and unique to how memory palaces are explained. I don't know that for sure, and it doesn't really matter. But we're really trying to figure this out, how we can make it so that more people understand in a combination of ways. And then we'll also be able to update the masterclass in really powerful ways. And so I'm really super grateful for what happened in meeting him and having him photograph the entire memory palace, having him being a graphic person who can turn it into diagrams, illustrations, and so forth. And I also got a shout out to Lynn Kelly and Memorycraft. We were already engaged in this before this book came out and before I saw it, but the way that she has all these wonderful illustrations and graphics inspired both William and I. because it's just wonderful, and she's got just a number of wonderful illustrations. So I'm really influenced by that. And so I was showing William these two books, and I had also given him a book. And so I thought maybe somehow this also went with him. And so I retraced my steps, continuing to relax. And I thought, when I call him, which is the next step, I thought, oh, I don't want him to think that I thought that he stole it or something like that. It was like worrying me and adding stress. And I just thought, well, it doesn't matter, because let's just say that he did steal it. I still need it back, right? And I don't think that he would. And even if he did, well, then, there's appropriate measures to follow there, etc. And also, it's a hard mental strategy, but just let it go, right? Let's just say that we never find it. Just let it go. Let it go. And so that's very, very calming. Anyway, so William says, yeah, I don't remember that, but I will look. And the important point here is that by allowing myself to follow these steps, which I've followed before, to great success again and again and again, it certainly is a higher success rate of finding things than getting all stressed and then, starting to angrily rummage through all sorts of stuff. That doesn't have a very good success rate. This has a huge success rate. But by allowing myself to just call him and ask, I was able to let it go. And so then I went back to the first step, relax. And then lo and behold, I knew exactly where it was. Because what had happened, and you can't see this, but after I showed it to him, I put it back on the shelf where it belongs, but I put it back in the wrong way because I knew I was going to need it again in a meeting. But instead of where exactly it belongs in the shelf, I put it this way instead of this way. And then on a live stream, one of the lights had fallen and pushed it, and it fell back behind my desk. And I remember I will get it later after the live stream, and I just forgot to get it after and rescue it, and then it went into the sands of time. But this was the steps that I followed to get it, and I would recommend this because I've been doing this for years, and it's been helpful. And I can't think of anything that I didn't eventually find, and I've lost things that are way more valuable than this, and found them in this strategy. It's not really lost. Isn't the real right word. It's that they've been misplaced, or there's poor management, poor thinking. Like putting this the way that I did was poor thinking in that moment. And then not immediately following up to rescue it from where it had fallen was poor thinking. But these are the strategies. And how does this relate to passwords? Well, you can follow the same steps. If you can't remember what email you use for a password, etc., if you can't if you know the email address, but somehow you can't use a password reset or whatever it is, you can still follow this generally, right? So in this case, it might be relax first and then write out thoroughly all the potential things that it could be. So did you use a word, or did you use a password generator, or what have you done? That's the look once thoroughly. Go through thoroughly all the possible things. Then mentally retrace your steps, so to speak, is, well, are there other ways? Can you call the company, for example, etc., to get that unlocked? Just retrace steps in a certain way and just ask. Ask. There's got to be a way for you to get your password back, whatever it is that you've lost. So that's the relationship I see between remembering passwords that are lost and finding missing objects. And then, of course, we want to just be willing to let it go, continue to relax. Another strategy you can do is run the alphabet. So you can think just simply like A, what could A trigger, right? Did I leave it by some object that you might have, like my Ankh necklace or something like that? Is it near the Ankh necklace, or is it near the bookshelf? Is it near the cookie cutter? Whatever. Just run through the alphabet, even if it doesn't make any sense. Run the alphabet, and then just repeat these steps as needed. So let's check out our chat here. James says, in the sunset of my 40s, I turned 50 in 2020. Wow. So this is all the more interesting because we can share our aging together in the Magnetic Mary Method community. Congratulations on such an accomplished set of decades there. And look forward to saying happy birthday if you'll let me know on that day. Maybe we have a live stream for you. Cronin Walking says, no, I didn't. I also have a lot of clutter in my house too. It's probably under my husband's junk. Well, give these things a try and hopefully you can recover it. Martin says, mentally retrace my steps is my first go-to. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Well, I hope that some of these additional steps give you more to try if that's not already bulletproof for you. And again, this isn't about bulletproof strategy. This isn't about some perfect magic bullet. But I think it's much more rational and reasonable and tactical and useful and helpful than some of the others, such as panicking. All right, because panic allows the evil Dr. Forget to get hold of your soul. All right, so we found the Giordano Bruno book. We found Geneva, Ohio, and wonderful, wonderful. Austin is in the house. Good to see you, Austin. Thanks for being here. If you're just joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking. And just to remind everybody, we're having this webinar. If you're not signed up, go to magneticmemorymethod.com/RX. Existing masterclass family and new people are welcome alike. Always fun when the existing people show up. This is completely new, so nobody has seen this webinar before. And these strategies and techniques are going to help you relax. So this is a huge thing I've noticed over the years, is many people are too stressed to use memory techniques. They're too tense. And there's just some very, very simple and direct things you can do that will help you, in addition to what we shared today. And if you want to follow some of the links down in the description below, there's a previous video on 3 ways to remember passwords. Love for you to check it out. Hit the thumbs up on it, share it around, leave comments, etc. There's quite some amount of comments there, and I was just delighted to see many people finding their passwords, or so they say, which is great. And also the fist with William, who I mentioned today as another strategy that you can use to help with the memory issues that we talked about today. Also in the links below is our discussion with Brad Zupp about his book, The Hack-Proof Password System. Highly recommend it. Session with Jonathan Levy about passwords, especially for the entrepreneurs out there and so forth. And great discussion. Link below. And then, of course, the Relax Your Memory webinar coming up to help you in the maximum possible way. For those who are interested, we'll be really interested in seeing how you do with these additional techniques. And remember, it all comes down to actually implementing what you learn from these techniques and making sure that you implement so that you actually can practice consistently, because that's what helps, is that you consistently do it. Don't try to do it all, or don't worry about this absolute magical transformation so quickly, because you're more likely to get that magical transformation quickly if you let go of the outcome and enjoy the ride, enjoy the journey, because you're relaxed. Relax. Very, very important. So Austin says he's in Montana, thinking this could definitely be helpful. All right, I like Montana. I've been through there a few times. I like Missoula. Do they still in Missoula have the sign up on the mountain of the name of the city? I always thought that was kind of cool. So let me know in the chat if you have any comments, questions, things you would like to discuss. And be curious who has seen Joker. Interesting movie. I recorded, but I haven't released my Joker response on my film studies channel. Might put that out there, might not. I don't know. What do you think? Anybody interested in 20 minutes of me talking about Joker? It's a lot of fun to do film studies. It's very good for your memory, actually, to watch movies, to think about them, to talk about them, to draw from your memory, hear what people remember differently about different movies. So I may or may not release that on my other channel, but always interested to know to what extent you all find value from those sorts of things. And of course, when I get cricket responses, then I think, maybe not. But when I get interested responses, then of course I think maybe so. Now, in terms of general memory exercise, shout out to Roald Dahl. I don't know if you all know Roald Dahl, but he's got some cool books they've been putting out recently, like the Dahlmanack. which has fun jokes and facts and stuff. And I've been thinking about memorizing jokes a little bit more and maybe doing some stand-up comedy and so forth. I don't know if I'm a very funny person, but it might be fun as a memory exercise, as a learning project. I don't know if I would do it or not, but there's just some great jokes in here that I need to memorize and think about the memorization of jokes and how all that works. Like, why did the teacher put the lights on? Because the class was so dim. I mean, it's not very nice, but it's kind of funny. Did you hear about the cross-eyed teacher? He couldn't control his pupils, which is very funny. I gotta think about, do I want to memorize some of these or not? And they're dated, some of them, and some of them might not be so politically correct. He's a good guy though. Funny guy. Let me see if I can find you another joke here. Anyway, one of the things too is why, like, just as a general sort of memory exercise for myself, I've been thinking of just rereading all the kids' books that I really loved as a kid, and then using them to unpack more memories. And some of the jokes here, like, you need to know Roald Dahl because they're jokes about his own books. In any case, there's a lot of different little, like, mental exercises in this as well. So little games you can play and strategies and so forth. I really like this book. And I like Roald Dahl. So that's a little memory exercise for you, is you can go out and make a list of all the books you loved as a kid and then reread them and do some memory excavation. Where did you read them? Make a memory palace out of it. Could you memorize some of the character names that you've forgotten, like Veruca Salt, right? If you'd forgotten it, memorize it and then see what comes up. Expand. Remember that EEC. Expand your existing competence. What better way to expand your existing competence than to go into that childlike state, the way you loved reading as a kid, or the stories, and just thinking about, Veruca Salt. And I'm thinking, was that really a kid from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory? It must have been. That's where that's from, and so on. So lots to do. There's no end of the wonderful memory exercises that we can all come up with and do. All right. Chroma Walking says, yes, I want your POV since I've read some mental health experts and I don't like it. Okay. I'm curious. Please say more when you have a chance, now or later, what you mean about not liking some mental health experts. That would be interesting. So I have a bigger frame of reference when I get into that project. Please let me know more. Austin Study says there's an M on Mount Sentinel, although I'm unsure if they have a sign that spells out Missoula still. Okay, so I'm not misremembering that they used to. I remember that. Or at least I think I remember it. Anyway, I like Montana. Does anybody know the Frank Zappa song, Montana? I might be going to Montana soon to raise me up a crop of dental floss. It's something like that. I've never memorized it, but it's so hilarious. It's so fun. He does a lot of, like, spoonerisms and malapropisms and wonderful, goofy things with language. It's wonderful. So if you haven't heard Montana by Frank Zappa, going to Montana soon, gonna raise me up something food. I don't know, typhoon. I got to memorize the lyrics actually one of these days because it's so amazing. It'd be fun to think actually how to memorize the lyrics and sing and play, because he was able to sing and play, or at least I have images in my mind of him singing and playing, but he also just used to let go of his instrument and let the band play while he sang. In any case, a lot of people just don't play enough. They're not relaxed enough, and there's so many adult opportunities like Frank Zappa to just relax. Like if you don't have if you're not reactionary to just play with language and fun, like Zappa has so much cool stuff, but he offends a lot of people too. So, parental guidance wording for those who need it. But one thing that you could do to learn more about Zappa is read this book. It's called The Negative Dialectics of Poodle Play. Weird title, right? But in that book, it really explains a lot of what the author, whose name I should remember, I never memorized it. This is a book. I may not even be remembering the title properly, but this is a book I read years before I did memory techniques back in high school. I think maybe I read it in early university, but anyway, I think it's called The Negative Dialectics of Poodle Play. But he explains in great and interesting detail more about the Zappa project. And Zappa himself was very good at enunciating the Zappa project. So I think it's called the Frank Zappa book, and or the real Frank Zappa book, whatever it's called. It's just so good. All right. So Reclaiming Life says, Roald Dahl has been one of my heroes. Good. Hi, by the way. Thanks for being here. Glad to see you. Wonderful. Roald Dahl says, Reclaiming Life says, Roald Dahl has been one of my heroes ever since reading his dialogue against TV and the whole concept of digital amnesia in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, which was inconveniently left out of the movie. Yeah, I'm trying to think through. Are we talking about the Gene Wilder movie or the Tim Burton movie? I've never seen the Tim Burton version. I haven't seen the Gene Wilder, and I'm sad to say I don't know who directed the version with Gene Wilder. It's been decades since I saw it. In any case, it can be that it was wiped out of both of them, and I guess that's where maybe Roald Dahl talked about, as you're saying. I haven't read his dialogue against TV, so I want to read that. That sounds very, very interesting. So one of the things about Dahl, of course, is that he was a great critic. He was a great social critic. A lot of people don't know he also wrote stories for adults. So I think it's called Lamb to the Slaughter is a really, really good one for adults. I think a lot of his children's books were also for adults. So yeah, I'd love to know more about what happened there and what was elided from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I got to revisit all that stuff. I think there's a lot of magic and secret, wonderful joy to be excavated as an adult reading those things again. Because it certainly is just this thing I found. It's very, very funny. So cool. Chroma Walking says, the mental health experts do not like the Joker movie because it doesn't present a good picture of mental health. I will dig up the article and send it to you. Great. Okay, so yeah, I mean, I'm not a mental health expert, but I'm a former mental health patient, and there's a couple of ways to think about it. So maybe I will release it on my other film studies channel. Basically, I think that the mental health aspect of it is interesting, but it's sort of the least of the interesting things to think about there. And so one of the things that I think is really, really important to talk about there is the nature of the real and the nature of the fake, the pretense, the showmanship, and the idea that performance is not real, right? And illusion and fantasy do not have real implications. And that is something that the movie is very good about and that I talk about in what I already recorded. So we can definitely get into that on the other channel. And there's a lot. I go on at a fair amount of length, but to be honest, one of the reasons I haven't released it is that I'm a bit rusty talking about film studies, and so I might redo it before I release it. But then at the same time, it is what it is, and I don't know that it's going to get any better by redoing it. But the other thing too is a lot of people kept talking about King of Comedy, but I think that it's more resonant with things like other gangster movies. So I think it has a lot more parallels to some of the De Palma movies, for example. And I haven't heard anybody talk about that. It's not nearly as Scorsese as people are saying. I think it's a lot more like Carlito's Way. I think it's a lot more like Scarface. And I think also that it's a lot more like The Matrix than anybody else that I've seen is talking about. Because there's a problem in The Matrix when we think about the issue of masks and artifice and real, like, illusions having real consequences. Even once that we get rid of the illusory world, it still has the illusion still has consequences in the real, and then, what is real, etc. And to whom could a real ever actually be real? And I'm talking about the Matrix as a whole, not just part one, as we would like to often cherry pick it. Whether we like part two or not, whether we like part three or not, they are part of what the Matrix is in the world. And so we've got to be intellectually honest. We've got to take as much of the existing field as possible and interweave them and what they're trying to say as a series, regardless of our like-dislike monster. And personally, I think that part three is got genius in it that cannot be realized without parts 2 and 1. So it's a bit of a fallacy out there in criticism that one should like things in order for them to have valid things to say about the world. And that's just not the case. That's part of what's called the intentional fallacy. It's part of what's called the authorial fallacy, and yada, 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 film study stuff, blah, blah, blah. But for those who are interested, we will jive on that if I release it and when I will release it to do that. All right. So, okay. Thank you for that, William. Allpoetry.com poem, Television by Roald Dahl. Let's, while we're here, let me see if we can't pull this up. Shan't we? All right. Television by Roald Dahl. Television. The most important thing we've learned, so far as children are concerned, is never, never, never let them near your television set. Or better still, just don't install the idiotic thing at all. In almost every house we've been, we've watched them gaping at the screen. They loll and slop and lounge about and stare until their eyes pop out. Last week in someone's place we saw a dozen eyeballs on the floor. They sit and stare and sit until they're hypnotized by it, until they're absolutely drunk with all that shocking, ghastly junk. Oh yes, we know it keeps them still. They don't climb out the windowsill. They never fight or kick or punch. They leave you free to cook the lunch and wash the dishes in the sink. But did you ever stop to think, to wonder just exactly what this does to your beloved tot? It rots the sense in the head. It kills imagination dead. It clogs and clutters up the mind. It makes a child so dull and blind. He can no longer understand a fantasy, a fairyland. His brain becomes as soft as cheese. His powers of thinking rust and freeze. He cannot think. He only sees. All right, you'll cry. All right, you'll say. But if we take the set away, what shall we do to entertain our daring children? Please explain. We'll answer this by asking you, what used the darling ones to do? How used they keep themselves contented before this monster was invented? Have you forgotten? Don't you know? We'll say it very loud and slow. They used to read. They'd read and read and read and read and then proceed to read some more. Great Scott, gadzooks, one half their lives was reading books. The nursery shelves held books galore. Books cluttered up the nursery floor. And in the bedroom by the bed, more books were waiting to be read. Such wondrous fine, fantastic tales of dragons, gypsies, queens, and whales, and treasure isles and distant shores, where smugglers rowed with muffled oars, and pirates wearing purple pants, and sailing ships, and elephants, and cannibals crouching round the pot, stirring away at something hot. It smells so good. What can it be? Good gracious. It's Penelope. The younger ones had Beatrix Potter with Mr. Todd the Dirty Rotter and Squirrel Nutkin Pigling Bland and Mrs. Tiggly Winkle, and just how the camel got his hump and how the monkey lost his rump, and Mr. Toad, and bless my soul, there's Mr. Rate and Mr. Mole. Oh, books, what books they used to know, those children living long ago. So please, oh please, we beg, we pray, go throw your TV set away, and in its place you can install a lovely bookshelf on your wall. Then fill the shelves with lots of books, ignoring all the dirty looks, the screams and yells, the bites and kicks, and children hitting you with sticks. Fear not, because we promise you that in about a week or two of having nothing else to do, they'll now begin to feel the need of having something to read. And once they start, oh boy, you'll watch the slowly growing joy that fills their hearts. They'll grow so keen, they'll wonder what they'd ever seen in that ridiculous machine, that nauseating, foul, unclean, repulsive television screen. And later, each and every kid will love you more for what you did. Well, thank you, Roald Dahl. That was a great speech. Love it. Thank you, William. I like that. Now, what a well-written poem. You know, anybody could just read that, and if they were an actor, they could just do a great performance off the cuff. Wonderful. Thank you, William. I love that. Let's hope the robots don't punish us for assuming consent. Wow. What an amazing poem. What an amazing poem. And what's so good is you can feel the rage, right? Now, the question is he right? There's a bit of historical fallacy in there, I think. But it's obviously coming from love. And we can learn so much from that. Because if we want the world that we want, free from too many of these fellows, we can certainly do a lot with books and with reading, and maybe LeVar Burton can come back with his wonderful TV show Reading Rainbow. Miss that a great deal. I think there was a podcast he had, LeVar Burton Reads, or LeVar Reads, but I don't know if it's still going, but that was very, very good. And maybe some people could memorize that little ditty by Roald Dahl, but that's filled with many, many gems, regardless of any latent historical fallacy. Yeah. All right. So I think that did us well. Let's sum up. Found this very, very good. It can work its magic, and we're gonna have the giveaway for the Ultra Learning, and I guess I've got about 10. I should look and see, but I do have definitely 2 of these to go along with the Ultra Learning giveaway. Thanks to Scott, by the way, for allowing me to do that, and we're going to do a video together to announce the winners. A very, very small task for those who are interested. We'll have more information about completing that task next week. Martin says, nice rendition, by the way. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I think it's only possible because it is so well written. It's written, and you can see so much elbow grease in it that it enables anybody to have a good pass at it. And to that theme and topic, if my rendition lent anything to it or came off in any way nice, it has something to do with that principle that we talked about: SIP, DOC, and EEC. Right? So SIP is study, implement, practice. DOC is doing is the origin of competence, right? And discipline is the origin of competence, and so forth. And that sort of verbal rendering forth of something off the cuff may be coming from the fact that I've done a lot of poetry presentations. And when we were looking earlier for Geneva, Ohio, I used to do performances out of books like these, and just learned a lot from being around poets and seeing them perform and how that they performed. And I also had the great lesson from someone whose name was Roger Kewen, if memory serves, because there's a poem in this book that won 3rd place in the Robbie Burns Prize. It was $50, if I remember. And I heard him read one of my own poems. Roger Kewen, I'm sure that's what his name was. He was a Shakespearean scholar, and I don't know if he had ever acted, but reading this poem at the prize giving event on Robbie Burns Day was just the most amazing thing, and it taught me so much about what language could be. And I just thought, did I write that? It was wonderful, wonderful. And that poem I should reread one day. I don't think it's I mean, it won the Robbie Burns Prize, so I'm not sure it's exactly family friendly. But neither is this book, quite frankly. Definitely PG-13. But an interesting book. It actually came up when I did the the interview with Alec from Aphantasia Meow, because I was so astonished by how non-visual my writing was and how conceptual. And so I was explaining to him, and if you heard that interview, or if you saw it, I was explaining to him how I was trying to make so many things visual, and you can see sort of how that worked. Like, I would do things with text to make shapes and stuff to make it more visual. I've got to go through this book. Maybe we should re-release it at some point in the future. Probably not worth the time or effort, but many adventures, and it's back to that existing competence thing, though. Expanding your existing competence. And so it's such a good thing that by using the strategies that we talked about today, I was able to find this, because in my book journey, trying to get to good books like this, I've had to go through many, many books, through many, many different styles of publications, and think and expand the competence. And it's practice, right? Don't try to get things right the first time. Try to develop the skills of practice, because no matter how good your next book is, or your next thing that you memorized is, or your next whatever it is that you do, there's another to come. I'm reading Nelson Mandela at the moment, and he says, you climb the mountain only to see that there's another mountain and it's bigger. The mountain you're climbing now reveals the next mountain behind it. That next mountain is bigger, it'll be more challenging, etc. And that's a good thing. That's actually the best thing in the world. So, speaking of other mountains to climb, I am making a course on memorizing Chinese characters for a company, and I'm very, very excited about that. So that's coming up soon. Michael Swain and I are collaborating. It's mostly him doing most of the stuff, but mentoring him through it, and also making some videos for it on a Japanese course. So that's coming, and just so many things, wonderful things. And I appreciate each and every one of you for being interested, for supporting. Hit that thumbs up. Leave a comment if you're watching the replay down below. And a special thanks to Chroma Walking for her contribution super chat today. Always appreciate those super chats. Thanks, Reclaiming Life, for the opportunity to read some poetry. Since that some of you are here who are in the mastermind, I'm not sure if we're going to get that all sorted by the end of the month for our next session, and I haven't quite decided yet. So I appreciate your understanding and patience as I figure it out. I'm in fact going to follow one of our own members' style to sort of work out what I'm thinking and what the mastermind can be in its next iteration, but it will still almost certainly be with the same software, because it looks like they got it figured out. I'm taking a bit of a risk with our webinar here, but it looks like everything's back to snuff. And sorry, that's not quite the right term. Up to snuff? Yeah, something like that. It looks like it's up to speed, let's just say. And so I'm going to think about following. This is Keko, who's in our mastermind group, and she did this, and I'm just gonna mind map out what might be better, and continue to seek some feedback about what works best for everybody. But I think we'll go into a slightly different iteration, but still serving both the people who like to be on the one place and the people who don't like to be on that place, and it's all going to be fantastic, and it's going to be even better than before. But if you're in the mastermind, please go and check it out on the Memory Dojo page, because all of the replays are now there. And there's a lot of them, but they're titled, and I'm very happy about this. They're titled to the best of our abilities, and you can just, cherry pick, so to speak, and go through them and grow your skills, grow your existing competence. So I really appreciate everybody's support and patience in figuring out how best to put so much content in the mastermind area. I think we did okay, and always appreciate your feedback, and we can improve it later if need be. But I personally got so much out of doing it, and I want it to continue in a way that's even better. And maybe that will be just doing it as we've been doing it, but certainly good to take a bit of a breather and reassess and see that we can improve it. And you know what? If the new iteration is not an improvement, then we can always go back to the model that we established. And that's just the way things go. All right. So Reclaiming Life says, I still have such difficulty thinking about aphantasia because of how I have hyperphantasia. Well, that's great. I mean, I wouldn't. My point, and we had a bit of a Twitter storm around this, and I think I was diplomatic in a way that sort of put it in a nice area in collaboration with those others who also turned around, I believe, and it settled nicely. I think that whatever one has is just the most beautiful thing. Just can you see it as being the most beautiful thing? And yeah, I still have difficulty thinking about aphantasia, so to speak, or hyperphantasia, because it seems to me that the real problem that underlies all of this is just that people aren't paying attention to what is and enjoying it and loving it and nurturing it and finding that existing competence and expanding it so that you can just, as the Stoics would say, amor fati. At least as I understand Stoics say it. Maybe it's just Ryan Holiday, I don't know. Reclaiming Life suggests Zoom. Yeah, Zoom is a good alternative, but it doesn't quite hit the mark. But potentially, I may need to revisit Zoom. Let me see. Let me think about it. I appreciate that. You say both words are in quotes due to them being relative to each other and subjective to the individual. Okay, I must have missed some words. Not sure which words are in quotes. Oh, I see. Sorry. Observation. Fail. Aphantasia and hyperphantasia. Both words are in quotes due to them being relative to each other and subjective to the individual. Yeah. I think that there could be a lifetime conversation around this. We'll see where it goes. I'm not particularly in any need to control the outcome or the conversation, though I have observed that some people seem to have a need to control it, and I'm much more interested in the conversation. I've invited the Twitter people to record a roundtable or a one-on-one session for the podcast for the better of the whole, and so far there's been no takers, so that's fine. But obviously that limits our ability to have a discussion that has more characters than Twitter. So all is well, all is as one would expect it to be, which is very similar to how it usually is. So thank you everybody for today's session. I always appreciate all of the wonderful interaction, and again, extra special thanks to Cromwell Walking for the super chat, Reclaiming Life for the wonderful poem and great conversation. And you're catching me. Look, if you got any last things you want to say or questions, pop them in now. Yo Mama says, for learning programming languages, would you recommend using standard vocal language techniques? Thanks for that question. Let me know what you mean by standard vocal language techniques. I'm not sure what that means. But maybe we can take a check. I'm curious. Let's have a second to examine what that might mean. And thank you for your question. Generally, a good practice is not to assume that anybody knows what you're talking about. I get nothing in particular off of page 1 of Google, and I know that it's a bad practice to just use page 1 of Google as a measure of what you might mean, but that only tells me that we need more clarification from you. But I appreciate the question, and please expand. Claiming Life says, it's quite comical to me to see so many new posts and articles over the internet about people being surprised they have aphantasia. Yeah, I mean, there's just so many angles on it. There's so many angles. And it is surprising. I don't know that I find it comical, but I certainly find it tragicomical. It's a tragicomedy because this can't be new, and that people can't see the, shall we call it, the pharmacon of the new term is also tragic. And I'd say it's more tragic than comedic. But I want it to be comedic, because if it's truly comedic in the narratological sense, then we will have a union at the end. We will have a symbolic marriage, a symbolic meeting of the minds. All right. So Yomama says for syntax and speaking language vocabulary. So I don't know what you mean by standard vocal language techniques. I'll need a definition of what that means. I'll need your definition of what that means. And we can talk about what I would recommend for programming languages. Let's start here. If you don't have a memory palace network, start there. If you don't know how to use magnetic imagery, then after you know how to use a memory palace, know how to use magnetic imagery. Then know what recall rehearsal is. Then put recall rehearsal into practice. And then finally, those things are in order, but then practice consistently over time. Now, after you do all those things, and ideally before, and then after again, and then over and over and over again, understand this and put this into your practice. There's nothing special about programming languages. There's no need for some special technique. The information doesn't care. Your brain doesn't care. The techniques don't care what the information is. Only the ego cares. So, master the fundamentals, then look at the information with a reminder, no ego, no enemy, and just look at the information and memorize it. It's that simple. And so if you don't have the free course, get it at magneticmemorymethod.com/YT, or just join us on the webinar, Relax Your Memory, at magneticmemorymethod.com/RX. And we're going to have a great time, and I'll help explain how that if you could just relax, you learn all of this a lot faster, more thoroughly, more completely. You practice it a lot faster, more thoroughly, and more completely, so that you can memorize very, very quickly. And with the magnetic memory method, you will make sure that you are memorizing only the most relevant and useful and needed material for achieving the goal of what's going to benefit you in the programming language. Instead of getting overwhelmed by the thousands and thousands of data points that you could memorize, you'll just memorize what you need to memorize in order to get ahead quickly. So that is the answer so far, without further understanding of what you mean by using standard vocal language techniques. And notice, everyone, that the lack of follow-up and definition is a bit of a bottleneck that could be solved. And when you are asking questions, remember the Feynman technique, particularly with the magnetic memory method add-on, and you can look that up if you like on the internet and see what I have to say about the Feynman technique. There's at least 2 videos about it. It'll help you a great deal, so you're asking better questions and getting better answers as a result. But I think that answer was not too terrible. All right, let's see here. Claiming Life says, I kept struggling with Russian words due to the Cyrillic alphabet and not knowing the names, just sounds of the letters. When I put them in a memory palace based on just on IPA sounds, I've made great progress. Excellent, excellent. So, not clapping too loud, but bravo. And finding your way is an amazing thing. And, there's a few ways to deal with all of that. And you have found a great way. And IPA is well worth the time. So, thank you, everyone. Without further ado, I am going to bolt out of here because I've got a course to shoot, and look forward to sending out some news about how that's coming along, and hopefully you will be interested in it and get it, because it's going to be a lot of fun for those who are interested in things like what William is mentioning, because Cyrillic is one thing, Chinese characters are another thing, but when you just approach it from this viewpoint that we've shared about the information doesn't care about anything, right? It's just information. Your brain doesn't really care what the information is, and the techniques don't care what the information is. So only your ego is in the way, right? And all you need to do is know what the techniques are, know a bit about how your memory works and how your brain works, and then know how to relax that ego so it gets out of the way, stops being your enemy, and you can just focus on getting it done. That's what the Relax Your Memory webinar is all about at magneticmemorymethod.com/RX. And I will look forward to seeing you all there. Maricela is in the house. You were driving until now. Well, the replay will be there for you, Maricela. And, all existing masterclass and mastermind members are welcome to that webinar if you want to join us. And that is that for today. Thank you for the exciting session. And again, thank you to Chrome Woman Walking for the super chat. And Reclaiming Life says, much love and respect to our sister Maricela, who just made it. Likewise, much love and respect to all. And until we have a chance to speak again, this week's video, I think it's going to be very interesting to you. And I better be careful, actually, because it's so elaborate that it might not be exactly on time, but we're going to do the best that we can to get it there on time. Our usual dedicated video, non-live stream video. And I hope that we will, that you'll like it, because it's a slightly different direction and an experiment. And I want to be sure that that it's coming. Can't say what it is yet, but I'm very, very excited about it, because quite frankly, I don't know why I didn't think about doing a video on it before. So that's coming up hopefully later this week, and I hope to see all of your thumbs up and comments in the discussion of that video and share it around, because you'll probably see that I've been talking around it lately as well, and then you'll go, oh, that's what he's been up to. Or you won't. In any case, thanks everybody. Thank you, Martin, for being here, and thank you for supporting this work with your thumbs up. If you haven't hit them yet, bam, thumbs up. Let me know in the replay discussion if you have any thoughts about this, any questions, and I hope to see you on our webinar later. Until we have a chance to speak again, thank you for being here today, and keep yourself magnetic. Bye-bye.
Hey, everybody. So I'm here in the Atlanta airport. I was just thinking about how grateful and thankful I am for what Anthony did for me. I do seminars all across the country. Usually have about 100 to 300 people every single weekend. And one of my biggest goals was to be able to memorize their names, and started studying some stuff and learning. And it wasn't connecting as fast as it needed to. And I just wasn't connecting the dots, and started doing some research online. And there I found Anthony. And Anthony, I just want to tell you thank you very much for all that you've done. Now, it's my memorization is through the roof. I've almost reached my goal of getting 300 people at one time. I'm not exactly there yet. I'm off just by a few, but I'll get there as I keep practicing and keep connecting what I've learned from you and what you've put and you've helped me with. And so I just want to tell everybody, if you're looking to take your memory palaces and your memory techniques to the next level, Anthony's the guy. If he can help me go from not even remembering people's names, and that's the biggest issue of my life in my seminars, to actually being able to memorize over 100 and something people's names, close to 200. Man, he can help any of you guys out with anything. So I just want to give a shout out to Anthony. Very thankful, very grateful for meeting you. Very thankful for the fact that as soon as I sent you an email, you responded very quickly, very promptly. You just opened up your time and gave me a scheduled time very quickly also. And the support afterwards was well above and beyond. You could have ended it right there, but he didn't. He kept emailing me and make sure I was okay, and would send me emails periodically to make sure that I was following up and following through. So again, just want to thank you very much, Anthony. As I'm walking through this airport, getting ready to jump on a plane in Seattle, I was just thinking about how grateful and thankful I am for you being in my life and for helping me take those steps to the next level. And if anyone is out there is ever thinking about, should I work with Anthony, the answer is absolutely, unequivocally yes, beyond the shadow of a doubt. I could probably keep going on and on. But again, thank you, Anthony. And I really appreciate you. You've been a blessing in my life.